Okay, can everybody hear me well? Everybody's good? Okay. At this time, we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. For those of you that need translation services, para alguien que necesita todo en español, hay una opción que puedo tocar para poner en español para ustedes. Eso es mejor español, so disculpe. At this time, we're going to go ahead and get this meeting started. We're already well behind. We wanted to start 15 minutes after. Moira has been patient with us, and I think we are ready to get going. So at this time, without further ado, Maria, you want to take the lead from here?
Yes, thank you, James. Hi, my name is Moira Allbritton. I am coming to you live from San Diego, California. And you ready for me to get going? Yes. I was asked to just come and speak to you all about what it looks like going into distance learning or online learning or remote learning as we all head into a new school year. Just a little bit, let's see if this will move. Whoopsie. There we go. Or not. Just a little bit about me. I am not an attorney, so all the information I'm going to give you is based on my experience as a mom. That is what I'm not a teacher. I'm not an attorney. I'm just a mom. Of the young people in the picture, of the 5 young people, 4 of them are on the spectrum, and I kind of have a broad spectrum within our own family, and I'll probably touch on a few of their needs as we go through our time together tonight, but just that's where I'm coming from. So this will be very pragmatic, very I don't spend a whole lot of effort on the minutia of what does the law say. I tend to take a more practical approach, and so hopefully you get something out of it. And also, if you need to use the Q&A feature or the chat feature, I'm not sure which would apply, feel free. I think James and others are standing by to bring those questions forward. Oh, and I guess I should just say, ages now, this is a couple years old, ages now are 26 to almost 12. This is just a brief kind of where we're going to go throughout this presentation. One is I'm going to do a very, very brief summary of CDE Guidance, California Department of Education Guidance. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that because it's been out for a month and a half or so. I'm going to then go into substantive issues, meaning what does it mean to learn online? Then hit some procedural issues specific to the IEP process. So, and then just a few kind of pragmatic, practical, simple things going forward. I think most of us would agree this has not been super fun. And at times it's been weird, at times it's been surreal. And how are we going to enter this new year in a way that creates some better educational outcomes for our students? And I think we're all starting to realize that it's going to be a lot on parents. So let's see if we can make that a little bit more straightforward. This is in just as a little small joke. 2020, very bad, would not recommend. Anyway, just to summarize, CDE Guidance, again, California Department of Education put out a ton of specifics that they wanted all school districts to consider. I was just briefly on the Imperial County Office of Education website, and they have done an excellent job of bringing forward the plans, bringing forward signage, like sample signage and that kind of thing to start to address these things. The requirements from Center for Disease Control, and then again from California Department of Education, really mandated all the districts to go back and have like a plan for cleaning and a plan for masking and a plan for physical distance, all these little plans. And so it looks like they've done a really nice job of synthesizing that into easy to understand plans for families to be able to look at. So again, health and safety being a primary issue. One thing I wanted to mention about face coverings. One of the things that's happening in San Diego is they've brought in a panel of experts from University of California at San Diego, and they've all said face covering is just basic. We need face covering. So obviously we have a number of students with disabilities who, for one reason or another, are going to have perhaps some difficulty tolerating, because of sensory reasons, understanding the need to keep it on, attention reasons, might want to take it off, might have breathing issues, might have a trach tube. Like, we have so many reasons that someone might not be able to wear just a regular mask. But a couple of things is, one, that there are a number of accommodations and workarounds that have been developed. And so the first thing to just kind of keep track of is, if your district requires face coverings, then your district needs to provide the face coverings to be used. Although I'm sure that if your child prefers a certain kind, you're welcome to send that kind, but that it should not come at an extra cost or extra stress for the family. But then the second thing is that there are accommodations that people have started to make. So whether it's face shields, the clear shields, whether it's a special kind of mask, whether it's a face covering with kind of a fabric at the bottom, those are all things that are being contemplated and worked through. And I'm sure that is not specific to San Diego Unified. Next. The other piece is just making sure that staff, and I'm thinking particularly students that require a lot of assistance with toileting, with different medical procedures, the PPE, so personal protective equipment, needs to be considered. And again, that's one that, whether that's extra, coverings for the staff, whether it's a special N95 mask for the staff, just to further protect students and the adults that are caring for them. So just keeping that in mind, that school might very well look, when we finally do get back, look far more, I guess, hospitalish than it did when we left. Okay, and then the guidance continues. Again, talking about specifically how to incorporate physical distancing. These are all, a lot of these are all about coming back to school. And so again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but just know that it is available for you to go back and look through, and that toward the end of the presentation, I'll clue you in at a great time to take a screenshot of a link that if you want to read more. Again, physical distancing, it just seems to be the motto. So this gets to the actual guidance to ensure a free, appropriate public education under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And so one of them is just focusing on the fact that FAPE, so the FAPE that you had prior to all of this, may very well be different once we, like right now, clearly FAPE is different. What the California Department of Education is telling districts is that whatever the school district is giving all students is now the basis for establishing FAPE. What that means is that if your IEP, let's say, was written for 30 hours per week of services in person, but then because of the COVID-19 pandemic, now the LEA is going to offer, let's just say, 4 hours a day of online learning to every student. That becomes the basis for FAPE. So we can't turn around and say, because my child's IEP said 6 hours a day and you've only given 4 hours a day, you owe me 2 hours a day. That's not going to fly based on, right now, what the CDE is saying. They're saying we really can't expect the district to do more than they are doing for everyone. And that's what the CDE is saying. And I mean, cognitively, I can follow that. It doesn't make it easy, and it doesn't make me feel like my child's getting what he or she needs, but that's the summary guidance. We need to make sure that students with disabilities are included. We cannot start by saying, we're only going to bring back everybody except for students with disabilities. That's probably not going to be, that's not going to work. And that would be a pretty flagrant violation. So that is one of the other things that they talk about. And they are also obviously saying, you know, the IEP process needs to be used to figure out what we're going to do when we bring students back. What they started by saying is we should have the IEP and we shouldn't change it. That was last spring. They said, don't change the IEP, keep it what it is. Now they've kind of reversed course and said, we need distance learning plans. We need to have a plan for what's going to happen if we can't go back to school. Hello. Or if we have sporadic or intermittent closures. So this is kind of where we were shortly after school ended in the spring. What I want you to really pay attention to, though, is that in the early stages, again, I'm just reemphasizing, initially, even the federal government said, oh no, we don't need to change the IEPs. The offer of FAPE should be whatever was written. Now there's this like backsliding, starting to say that things are going to be different, that there's just kind of you can read this in its entirety, but just suggesting that delivery of educational services is going to need to change. And so there is language saying that the IEP needs to meet and work with families to figure out how we're going to provide access to the general education curriculum, what kind of accommodations, what that placement might look at like in light of the new reality. I'm going to pause and just make sure we don't have any questions right now. And okay, so I want to just remind us, as we're looking at how are we going to make distance learning work, when the time comes when schools actually can start reopening, how we're going to make those kinds of decisions that will then face us as parents. So I start with just every family is going to be weighing those risks and benefits to both the student and to the family members that share airspace with the student. And just kind of reiterating, we all make these kinds of decisions all the time. When we sit in IEP meetings prior to any sort of, horrible virus, we thought about how much do we spend pushing our child and how much time do we let them be just, a child, to have some downtime. We talk about pushing in services, pulling students out of the environment to get specialized one-on-one services. Like we're constantly trying to figure out how do we provide academic and how do we provide functional skills. Like we're always as parents doing this, trying to make the very best evaluation of what our child needs, matching up their need with what we can provide to them, right? So now we find ourselves in this situation where we are looking at very different kinds of things: safety, socialization. If I wanted to completely protect my child from even the risk of getting a virus, I could keep them at home, but is that going to give them the skills for, community living in the future? My child needs consistency. My child has autism. My child really does best when it's predictable. And all of those things that we are not getting right now. But for consistency's sake, I might have to, if I want to have that same speech therapist, or if I want to have that person that we prefer, I might not be able to get as many service hours with that person. Another thing might be, how am I teaching my child to be flexible and to get along with lots of different kinds of kids when doctors are telling me we need to have the smallest groups and we need to not mix groups together. What does that mean as we look forward to re-entering school and having some of our services maybe in a separate setting, but some of our services in a more inclusive setting? So all of these this idea of weighing benefits and risks is going to be something I think is going to be with us certainly throughout this school year. And having those conversations with the teams, with your IEP team, but also as family members, what is our level of risk? What is our comfort level? What resources do we have? What do we need as a family? All of those things are going to be coming up. This is looking at, so I'm going to try to kind of break into two groups. We're going to do let's pretend that we are going back to school and walk you through some of the things that I think folks are going to want to consider in terms of IEPs. And then in a few minutes, we're going to really dig into the distance learning, because clearly that's where we're going to spend time. But I like to be, kind of optimistic. And so we are going to talk a little bit about how we could go back to school. One of the big considerations that I would suggest when we finally do get to re-enter school is really considering whether our children is kind of identifying how much regression and need for recoupment have occurred, how much is just regular learning loss that everybody's complaining about, and how much of it is truly, due to the specific severity and intensity of the disability that we've really lost skills, not just not gained learning, but that we've actually, moved backward. And how long is it going to take for us to reclaim those skills that we once had? So to really do that, yes, you could kind of do just a very informal assessment. In some cases, having a formalized assessment might make sense. For students that had triennials due during our however long this period goes on where we cannot be in person, even if triennial assessments go forward, I'm going to use my fourth child as an example. He had his triennial due in May. We met. It was absolutely rubber stamp, like we've done a records review. Yes, he has this and this. And so how do we construct an IEP? Yes, we know him, but we don't really know what he's going to look like when he's going back to school. So a couple of things that I asked for were a more thorough occupational therapy assessment when he gets back to school, a kind of a more thorough speech assessment, and then I asked for what's called a brief, and that's a specific evaluation of executive functioning. So those things that we need that face-to-face, or we need a little bit more closely dialed to when we actually are going back to school, those things are already in the IEP, kind of waiting to be fulfilled. So just something to keep in mind is that you too might want to make that request. Like, my child is no longer here. We need to make sure that we have a solid baseline of where he re-entered the school. Another consideration is going to be, as parents, looking at goals. Now that you've had your child home with you, I'm guessing that many of you are going, wow, we had a lot of goals on this IEP that didn't really apply to the home. We couldn't work on in the home setting, either because they called for a peer that wasn't available, or it was such a structured, specific kind of environmental setting that we couldn't replicate in our home. So I can go two ways. One, when we go back, am I going to want to have the school working on those goals that we couldn't possibly address at home, so that I know that they're getting addressed? Another thought is that maybe now that we've been working with our children, we now have a different evaluation of which skills we care about the most. And so we might consider pruning IEP goals so as to really shine the bright flashlight on those goals that we know now we really need the school working on, like really importantly, really intensively right now. So just something to consider is that as you are returning to school, like, does this goal even make sense anymore? Do I care about this goal anymore? I really care about this other thing that wasn't even on our radar now that I've spent 150 days solid, 24/7 with my child. Those are the kinds of things that as you go back, you could advocate for. Services are going to follow goals. Placement is going to follow services. One thing that I am pretty adamant about right now is just when we re-enter school, when we have an opportunity to rewrite the IEP, that we are putting in a specific condition for what are things going to look like if we fall into distance learning again. And I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. Coming back to school, there may very well be a need for some students to have some additional accommodations for on-campus learning, either because behavioral skills have declined, and we're going to need to relearn some of our like following school routines, giving people personal space might need to be a goal, but accommodations when we're supposed to be physical distancing, we might have had hand over hand for this kind of activity, and now we need to have a different level of prompt, or we need to consider having children be more visually prompted versus physically prompted. And then last on here is a discussion of supplemental support. And so something that I'm just encouraging families, especially with students with autism spectrum issues, is to really think about, without 6 months or more of school, that loss of routine, having some sort of supplemental support or additional paraprofessional assistance, at least during a period of transition back to school. I think that's going to be a big challenge for a lot of school districts to provide, but I do think it is something that warrants consideration by an IEP team. And certainly I would be having those conversations and being very transparent with the district about the behaviors that I am seeing in the home environment. And certainly if you're able to even have small forays into the community, what your observations are will be very important to communicate to the school. Any questions coming up yet?
No, we don't have any questions right now.
Okay. Okay. For some students with disabilities, again, this is in my fantasy camp where we're going back to school, just reminders that behavior intervention plan, if your child maybe didn't need one and now you think they do, that might be something else to have a conversation with the IEP team about. If you have a child with kind of other medical issues, underlying medical issues that for one reason or another might make them need to have some additional protections with reentering school, there's doctor statements, individual health service plan, whatever your districts call it, can be kind of supplements to the IEP. It's an opportunity for parents to review the plans that the districts have been required to make. And then also your particular school site should have a safety plan, and I am presuming that they will also be amending some of these safety plans. For example, a lot of times sites have a plan, and the plan is that everybody's going to go to this one area. Like we have some sort of natural disaster, or we have a fire or whatever, and the plan is that everybody's going to go stand on the field. Well, those plans are going to have to be rewritten to consider, okay, well, we can't all go stand in a big clump anymore. So just other kinds of things are going to be changing at your school, and as involved parents, those are all opportunities for you to help give input to your schools. Okay, now I'm at distance learning plan. I have heard this called, I kind of wrote down some of the language that I'm hearing. I'm hearing them called emergency plans. I'm hearing them called distance learning plan. That was kind of the popular lexicon earlier. I'm also hearing them called contingency learning plans. Regardless, what this means is when we can't be in our preferred setting for receiving educational services, here's our fallback. So rather than saying writing into an IEP, the fallback position, which would be then the very minimum services to a child. What we want to do is identify this as only during this time. This isn't really FAPE. This is just the best we can all do right now. I am hearing of some states where the districts are writing them for you, and the parent has no participation. Certainly in our district, that was what we experienced as we went in March to distance learning. What should be in these, and might not have already been in them, but that you can be asking for, are listed here. So a discussion of accommodations, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. I think the most important part is really clarifying parent expectations. So when we did learning back in the springtime, the timing that we got much less instructional minutes. We got related services weren't really happening from my son, let alone the number of minutes or the intensity or, that it was with peers, those kind of things. None of that happened. When we're going back into this model in this fall, we expect that this is going to be much improved. As districts have had time to plan and time to kind of wrap their minds around what this could look like and investigate what other school districts are doing, those things should all be improving. Communication plan. So what this would be is really writing and having a very specific conversation with your IEP team about how are we going to communicate? How often? How are we going to email? Are we going to have a phone call? Like, how are we going to communicate? And about what? Like, what has to happen before we have this communication? So I'm encouraging folks to really consider having that specific conversation so that staff knows what your wants are, what your needs are, because if you don't communicate them and then you don't have the outreach from your teacher or from one of the related service providers, that causes unnecessary friction if they don't know that you want to talk to them or to have that communication. So really I'm encouraging people to really be very clear and think through, how often do I want to communicate, and what are my needs? And that leads me into parent training. It's also parent education, parent counseling, however you want to. It is a related service. Now that you have been deputized as your child's primary educator, you might need more specific guidance, training. You might need the answer keys. You might need to have access to the video that teaches the lesson to be available to you when you're not at work. You might need a teacher to teach you how to support your child. So all of those kinds of things are parent training options that the school district really should be providing in support of this distance online remote learning. Then this other piece is this idea of schedules. This is not just a schedule for when your child has to be glued to their computer, but also a schedule of when are we building in time for like peers to be able to have some informal connection, to be able to have just at least, there's my classmates, to have a sense of belonging to a community, even if the community is occurring via this screen. Another schedule is opportunities for parents to either connect with each other or at least connect with teaching staff, related service provider, etc. Kind of going back up to accommodations. I'm going to flip. I thought I had a list with me. I think I will come up with it in a second. So discussion of accommodations can be the extra time to complete, can be things like that. It can be building in breaks. It can be having an opportunity to have a comprehension check-in with a staff member. There's a host of different accommodations that wouldn't necessarily have been in the IEP, especially, for example, the one of having a comprehension check-in with a staff member via Zoom. Like that wouldn't have been in the IEP when we were in person learning, but now we need to talk about like how are we going to deliver that. But again, this at the very bottom of your screen, it says, but should not supplant the IEP. That's my personal guidance to you. I think we will have, the longer this goes on, the more pressure there's going to be to kind of erode the IEP. And as a non-attorney, non-teacher, I would be really trying to maintain, this is what the free and appropriate public education looks like under regular circumstances. And so whatever else we're writing is not. This is temporary. Okay, hopefully that made sense. I have received a lot of questions as a non-attorney on the idea of compensatory education. And one of the things, just to kind of from the beginning, is to realize that I do not believe compensatory education is really spelled out very well in like legal writings. However, it's just something that's, services are provided when we realize that a student was forfeited a portion of their education. But given that this is happening across the board to all students with disabilities, to students without disabilities, to all ages, like everyone is impacted, not just in Imperial County, but across the nation. My gut is that we are extremely unlikely to get compensatory education orders just for students with disabilities, just based on what was in your IEP. I think that we are going to see more broad-based extra funding to make up for learning loss, and that's going to be expected to kind of be shared across whole districts. However, as districts return to brick and mortar, anything less than what you had going in would start to open the door to a possible comp ed request from you. I'm just reiterating that, again, they waffled. Remember earlier when I said initially they said this and now they've changed their mind a little, I think, in recognition of the volume and the duration that this event is going on. I think what's going to be most important is to keep an eye on what non-disabled same age peers are receiving. And also it's going to be super important to be really clearly memorializing the parts of distance learning that were totally ineffective for your child. No matter how old they are, no matter, whether they're diploma bound, whether they are in a more functional curriculum, it's going to be really important to be able to document, if everything is delivered on a screen, what couldn't we do? What goals couldn't we do? What services couldn't we make work? And I'm going to get to a little more specifics on that. I'm going to pause just to make sure if there's any questions. I am doing it. Okay. This is a lot of this information, and I sat in on a Rights Law webinar and then also just dug into their website. So I just want to credit, certainly Pam Wright's letter is number 4, but I want to also note, you need to document. If you didn't do any of this in the spring, that is totally okay, because we were all kind of treading water just to figure out what we were doing, how to get food, like all of those things. Now that we have a little bit more of a comfort level of being home and isolating, all of that, I want to encourage you, whether your school is starting on the 17th or the 24th or the 31st, to start the year with either a piece of paper or a calendar where you're just going to make some just generic notes of what goes well, what doesn't go well. It can be its own notebook. It can just be emails to your spouse or to a friend that you'll be able to pull up later, whatever works for you. But just document. What are you having to do as a parent to provide access for your child to get their education? And then what is the education agency doing? What materials have you had to make, or what materials have they brought to you? What is appropriate and working, what isn't? how did today's lesson specifically address your child's needs, or was it just for the whole class? What goals haven't been addressed at all? What goals are being addressed? What goals have been met? Those kinds of things. Again, emails, to me, those are easy to find and they live there in the cloud, but whatever works for you, that later, let's say your child doesn't get speech for weeks and weeks. It's no speech. Oh, first speech, in October 10th. Like just little notes that later, if you need to make a potential compensatory education claim, you have something to go on. We can eliminate number 2. Number 3 is just my ongoing, be really careful making any amendments to your IEPs. There is a sample letter at this web address, so this would be a good time to go print screen. And she really talks about writing a letter to an unknown person. Like, you're really not writing a letter to the person you're writing a letter to. You're writing a letter to the person who's going to read it 2 years from now when you're in the middle of, arguing about something that happened 2 years ago. A couple other things is just doctor's opinions. Like, if you're at the doctor and the doctor's like, absolutely no, your child's high risk, it might be helpful to ask them to put that in writing. And then clarifying expectations for the return to school as feasible. But again, that documentation piece, it really helps to identify requests as much as anything. If you're the person having to make the materials, if you're the person having to go, oh, the school hasn't been worked on except outside of online learning, then that's something that might be beneficial to be able to know later on. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to take a little pause, and I want to just go back to when I talked about the accommodations. I guess I should go back. Okay, under distance learning, things that could be accommodations could be things like textbooks, rather than just saying, oh, it's all online. We're just using online. Those textbooks, the consumables, the workbooks. It could be manipulatives, that if your child's taking a math class, that they need the little buttons to count, or they need this to sort, to be able to give meaning, and to be able to honor the kind of learner they are. If your child is a kinesthetic learner, meaning that touching and tactile and movement all help them to learn skills, then those are the kind of things that we might want to see in accommodations. It could be special seating. If your child needs one of those balls, if your child needs some sort of special cushion, if your child needs a weighted vest, if your child needs a slant board to do the writing, any of those kinds of things are all accommodations that the school district, now that we know, like now that we've kind of caught our breath, these are things that you should be able to either be able to pick up, or that the school district should be able to somehow get to you, to be able to support your child's learning online. Okay, I just wanted to go through that. Okay, still no questions. Okay, so looking at, I know some of you start back, I think as early as Monday, but it is never too late to start to support what we're going to be expecting of students once they do return to school. So among those things specific in my mind to things that I've been working on with my children on the spectrum, just the wearing masks, even if it's just for a few minutes, even if it's silly mask day, just anything that we can do as parents to get it to be a little less, to have less resistance. I don't want to get into the politics. I just want to say it will make, like, it is something that I think is going to be around. I think there are going to be expectations that students can do it. Wearing a mask will open up options, and can reduce differences. That doesn't mean that it's for everybody, but I'm just saying if your child is able to tolerate it, anything that we can do to support it will make reentry a little bit easier. teaching them to cough into the elbow, working on hand washing, whether that's with music therapy or music, common environmental cues with that kind of common environmental cue. On the Imperial County Office of Education website, for example, they have the signage already on the website under their COVID section. On the parents section, I think it's under signage, you can see what the district's going to post all over, posting at the bathrooms, posting here, talking about distance. And so when I talk about common environmental cues, you could be showing them online, look, these signs, this is how we wash our hands, this is how, you know, we stand. Everywhere you go where there's those little dots and we're supposed to be social distancing, helping your child go, oh, look, there's a dot, we stand on the dot. All of that kind of reinforcement is all going to make things much easier and create, is really going to support a transition back to community learning instead of individual at-home learning. And then also one of the things I've done with my kids just for kind of fun, but also just to see how they would do, is really looking at how well can they read my eyes? Because when we mask up, I'm sure you all have experienced this, when people are masked, you really lose a lot of the I guess reinforcement or those nonverbal gestures, those nonverbal communication messages from your listener. And so just kind of making it a game, like, what's my, you know, am I smiling? Am I angry? You know, and letting them see like, oh, there are changes, but I'm just not used to cueing on that because, you know, the mouth is so much easier to read. So all of these things, these aren't mandates, but if you have time, if you're motivated, if you know, if you want to, those are all things that would be helpful. Okay, next, summer preparation for, and here you see, it used to say fall success, and now I'm like winter, spring, reminding people, you know, social stories are, no matter how old your child is, and I say this with a 26-year-old who's already getting gray hairs himself, things that we had left behind, I find that the pandemic is making me go back to those tried and true things to work through some of the bigger challenges that we're facing now. So social stories are online. If you Google Carol Gray, you can go to the San Diego County Office of Ed has a whole library of them also. But social distancing, again, wearing masks, not that you're afraid, but that you're caring, you're not sharing. It doesn't protect you, it protects that other person. And so ways to frame that to make it less scary, looking at how when I go back to school, there's gonna be some things that are the same and some things that are different. Returning to an online platform. Again, a lot of our schools are saying it's going to be, you know, better than before. So what's the same, what's different? The more information and preparation we can receive from our districts means the more that we can impart to our children. So then this is my summer thinking, and it should just be thinking all the time. I am finding for me, given my personal family situation, that I am certainly having to work on my own self-regulation, my own problem-solving skills, and really making a more conscious effort of demonstrating that and talking through that to my child. Now, if you have a 3-year-old, I'm just thinking back to when my kids were smaller, and you know, I was just trying to get through the day with, you know, fewer than 20 tantrums. that used to be my goal. But as youngsters grow, there is this need to really model problem solving. And if there was ever a time that we could teach problem solving and that we're all being faced with problems daily, it's now. So whether that's how am I going to fit in this when I have to be, you know, 24/7 watching this person? How am I going to go to the grocery store? How am I going to take a shower? So really demonstrating like, well, what's my problem? Walking through the step, like, what's my problem? Okay, we identify the problem. What are the possible solutions to my problem? But really articulating this. It's metacognition, but we are demonstrating that when we ourselves are problem solvers. So I'm encouraging you to just really, this is a learning opportunity for all of our all of our children. Really noticing that taking care of yourself is super important. Like oxygen mask project, if you will, that if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't really do a good job taking care of other people. Recognizing that a lot of, at least in my family, if mama's calm and in a good mood, my children respond better. And so one of the things we worked on is we have this very small space that we've identified that can be just a place that nobody's going to get bugged. If you need to be, it's not a timeout. It's just a place that nobody's going to, one person at a time in that space, no demands. You go there, calm down. We'll talk when you're ready to kind of have a conversation or to have some communication. So those are just some other things that I know as parents are struggling, that these are things that when I'm more mindful and I'm doing them, we have better days. So just something to put out there. And then just, I want to just reinforce that as parents, before we were deputized to be teachers, that these things are just as important now, if not more important. And just, that we have the sleep schedules maintained, that we are working on nutrition, we are trying to make time for exercise, that we are putting limits on screen time to as much as we can. And that we are trying to incorporate literacy and numeracy into conversations and activities with our children. And we need to do that all the time anyway. And so I know those things are more challenging, but this is my little pep talk. We're still doing a good job. These are some resources that I found. And so this would be another opportunity to take a screenshot. The top one is from, I believe, the San Diego County Office of Ed. That is a major matrix of resources. The next link is the guidance for reopening from the California Department of Education. And then last, I put social thinking down there just because it's a great resource, I think. You don't have to buy anything. There's a ton of articles, there's a ton of ideas for students to, for your children, students, things to think about, ways to present information that continue to reinforce social skills acquisition. I think my last slide is kind of for fun, and I hope you all can laugh through this, but everything comes into, as long as your child is not on fire, that as parents, that, we're doing the best we can, we're doing great, it's going to be okay. And so I wanted to kind of try to end on a little bit of a positive note. And then I have time for questions and answers, or at least questions and responses. I hope that's kind of what you were expecting, James.
Yeah, no, you did a fantastic job, Moira. It's, we hope that there'd be more questions questions for you to answer at this point in time. But if we have any, please put them down now.
And I'm going to stop screen sharing. So let's see, stop share. There we go.
Perfect. So now unfortunately you can see me. So
there you are.
Yeah, there I am. And so now we're fantastic job. Yeah, fantastic job. Again, we're gonna make this available on our YouTube page, and we'll post it on our Facebook page so people can link to it quickly. We had one more was a comment, just great job. So can you see the Q&A right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a copy of the PowerPoint, I can send you a copy, and maybe you can figure out a way to make it available that's
Mhm.
fine. Was there, I guess my question for the audience, is there an age group? I know normally when I do talks like this, I get a little bit more, idea of, I have little ones, I have, a child that's an adult. And I'm just going to talk briefly I'm spending a lot of time with my adult child who was in a group home, is now, I pulled him out of the group home temporarily. I thought it would just be for a few weeks, and it's been a few months, just because of the major disruption, group homes having, kind of a lockdown, no family visits, not being able to participate in day programs, not being able to access their usual activities and reinforce, like everything. And so I definitely, I think I see the school part being of huge import, but I also, just as autism support, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this is affecting the grown-ups with disabilities every bit as much as it's affecting our young people.
So any more questions? I think we have actually a pretty good range here from our participants that are on. A couple of ones that are younger, but more so a few more that are already teenage or adolescent.
So some of the things,
So,
oh, I didn't know if somebody was typing.
let's see.
And I think one of the things we've tried to do that I'm really thinking I'm going to carry into the school year is really trying to give the days of the week some sort of meaning. I don't know if any of you that are watching this are finding that it just feels like every day is like the day before. There's so little that makes it, that gives something special to the day, just to have a sense of like, oh, we got to today. And my son is all about the root beer on Saturday. So I'm like, we got to have something for every day of the week just to kind of motivate mom. We're going to have M&Ms on Wednesday or something for me. But at least from my family, that has been a huge, just that it's so much togetherness. So
Exactly.
does anyone want to share? I don't know if they're comfortable sharing.
You're beating me to the punch right here. Gloria, if you can chat in and kind of type in a couple of things that you've done at home. Gloria's done quite a bit of things at her home to kind of keep the education motivated, keep everything rolling. As far as right now, we obviously we're in summer mode right now. So when I showed my son a new Chromebook that we got him, he was definitely like, no, thank you, no, thank you. So that was funny. Yeah, he immediately understood that was a school computer, and he wanted nothing to do with it. But at the same time, he works with it well. He's got a great teacher, so that helps out quite a bit also. It's with our experience, my son's 15, a great teacher makes a world of difference. And a bigger part of it is if your teacher has a big heart, then you're gonna see that, you're gonna feel that, and more so if they're know what they're doing, if they're skilled at special ed, and they're seasoned, then that's even better, versus the educator that either is skilled and knows and does a great job, but is lacking the heart, or somebody that's the other mode from there. But yeah, we've we're definitely fortunate down here to have a pretty good group of educators that do have a heart and do want to do what's best for our students.
Well, and I think one of the other things is just, continuing to, I work to really bring it to top of mind that I don't know what challenge, everyone is having challenges of one kind or another, and just trying to really keep top of mind that even though my challenges look like this, that educator A doesn't have any idea what I'm going through, but B probably has their own. And I think that was one of the difficulties, I think, on some families that had students that were included in general ed part-time, was really that sense of teacher ownership, and whether teachers went, oh, that student might be in my class 2 hours a day, but I'm still gonna invite them to Zoom. I'm still gonna, act like they're part of my class. And I think, I'm hoping that schools are really gonna open with that attitude of inclusion as we start this year. But I heard a beep. I don't know whether there was another comment.
I don't see any more comments on the chat at this point in time. I hope some people have some questions, but we didn't have too great of a participation. We know that, like you mentioned earlier, it's dinner time.
Yep.
So,
and it's summer. It's summer.
So, yeah, for us, this is usually typically for our area vacation mode. Everybody's out of town for vacation, but everybody should be in staycation mode. But it's possible that there's a few people that did escape and got out of their homes. But
and I see Gloria has written in that she turned a room into a classroom, implemented the visual routine, combined OT with arts and crafts, does hallway hopscotch to help with math goal. That sounds brilliant and fun. Son does have a difficult time with distance. Oh yeah. One of the other things I was going to say is just what kind of dovetailing with Gloria is just looking at all the things you can do that doesn't feel like you're in a classroom, and just really, one of the things I wrote in the bottom, like, my child is not making progress on essay writing, but he's chopping vegetables. I'd never let him have a knife ever until now. And I was like, you know what? I'm so sick of making, 3 meals a day and 2 snacks a day and just never ending kitchen, that we've worked more on chores. We've worked more on those functional, games, gardening, washing the car, like all the things we never had to have time to do. But that somebody else was telling me, my child's never made progress toilet training until we were all stuck in the house 24/7, because we were able to catch all, reinforce every positive. And I was going to just say, I'm just trying to end on a positive note, because there's so many, sad parts of this, or, feeling like we've missed moments. But my kids are talking on the phone to grandma and grandpa more than they ever did. We're going to mass in our PJs Sunday morning, sitting around the TV watching, church. And so I hope we're all trying to find those small silver linings of, connection with our child that will make this, not all bad. So, there's everybody. Hello. And if we can see Gloria, she can show us hopscotch.
Gloria gets a little shy, I think. So we'll see if she makes an appearance. But yeah, I mean, if you, let me see if I can. You should be able to unmute yourselves. All I can ask you is to unmute. So if you have Moira, questions for Moira, then you can ask directly now versus on the question and answer.
Or ideas for other people, because I'm not really.
Now everybody got shy. I put them on the panelist list.
No,
Like,
I don't know if you can hear me.
Hi, Gloria.
Hi. Thank you so much. This has been so informative and so helpful. I mean, you have phenomenal information that is great for all of us. I think no matter what age our children are. My son is 7. He has had a very, very hard time with distance learning. He still cries when he sees his teachers because he cannot understand why he's not there, but yet he can see them. At the beginning, it was kind of, he's nonverbal mainly, and he was trying to talk so bad to impress them, kind of as why I'm trying to talk. I'm like almost feeling punished because he wasn't there. So we just every day had to read social stories of COVID and that everybody was at home to help him understand that. So that's where we started, implementing all of these hands-on activities and just like fun stuff to not make the days feel so long. But it has been difficult. Our school district has been very supportive, providing whatever materials our children, at least, and I can speak for my son, whatever to meet his needs. But I think this is something that every family, is going through. And I think that's why it's so important that, you accept to come on and help us out, and that we put these on for our families so that they can get ideas of what can be done, and that they're not alone, that we're not alone. We're all in this together. Is very helpful. I can send you pictures. I can send you pictures of, I'm not there. I'm not at home right now, but I can send you definitely what I've done to show you guys what hopefully has helped Matthew. I'm hoping, but it's definitely for Matthew. He was loving school. He was barely in the midst of flourishing, and so it has been a setback all in all. No matter what I'm trying, he does love being around his friends, around his teachers. So we're just taking it a day at a time as best as we can.
Well, I'm going to look for hallway hopscotch photos on the Facebook page.
Well, I don't have a long hallway. Okay, I don't have a long hallway, and he had a small goal. We're working on small goals. So what I did is I just try to fit all the numbers that he's supposed to recognize and learn. So every time he walks into that little room, that area that we created as learning, he walks and I count them with him. He obviously doesn't count, with me. He makes the sounds that he can, but hoping that that'll help him also recognize along with whatever else we're working at the table. But little things like that. For arts and crafts, we've tried using the scissors, like say, for instance, with paper plates, cutting, if it's kind of like the face of a lion, helping him do that. But at the same time, he's using, the finger pinching to put on the googly eyes, and, the painting, little things like that don't make him feel so much as if he's working. So also helps him with sensory. Like for instance, and I got that from when I was little, the, corn syrup and the colored, like food coloring. They like that texture, they like that painting, they can lick their fingers and it's not toxic. So little things like that also, I can remember. So yeah, just whatever we can think of. And it's not, I would say it's not as difficult when they're smaller to come up with these things as when they're older, I would say, just because when they're smaller, I think any child of that age enjoys these activities. So it helps him, and it also helps my 4-year-old, which they're probably mentally at the same age capacity, I would think. So yeah, it's been a challenge all in all, but it's been helpful to talk to other families and hear their experiences and know what their challenges are and help one another, I think.
Well, and I was going to say, I know I mentioned it with regard to social stories, but even with, I have a 26-year-old who every day, over and over, it's when will things go back to normal? When will things go back to normal? When will it's over. It's very perseverative. And just knowing that this is a shared experience, whether our young people can actually put those words together or not, that there's that understanding that this isn't usual, that this is a disruption in everyone's, family existence. But I was going to say, we're going back to the token economy star charts. We're kind of having to, whatever you were doing like a year or two ago, suddenly it's like, okay, we gotta bring that back out of the toolbox. And all those kind of behavioral, reinforcing the positive behaviors. The days that I wake up and go, okay, today I'm going to catch them all doing something good. Those days where I'm going around looking for the positives have really been better days. It just takes so much as a mom to go, okay, I'm gonna, get on that horse and ride it around and find all the good. It takes a lot of effort. So I applaud you for trying to make things fun, and again, just reinforcing that this is the great unifier. when there's so many things that seem to divide us, this is one thing that I think all of us parents of children with autism can certainly appreciate and do this. So.
Definitely. Does anybody else have any more questions or any more comments?
I was just going to say, as for us, our son, he's 15, so he's a little bit older. He loves being home. He loves being in his room, playing, watching movies or whatnot. But when it's time to work, change is easy for him. I mean, it's been progressive and he's been getting better at it. But a lot of the stuff that we've been doing here at home is, trying to teach him a lot more daily living skills, things that he couldn't do when he was in school, because he was there at school, from 8 to 2:30, and then came home. You got to eat ABA from 3 to 6 every day. So now that I have the time, it's more, okay, you need to clean your room, get your dishes, wash them, throw your trash away, little things that he didn't have time before. And I think, well, I mean, we're homebodies. We love being home, and my son does too. But I think this quarantine has helped him out a lot doing that, like, sorting your clothes. Once it's washed, match your socks together, put them in your drawer, let's change it, different colors, put a load in the washer, brush your teeth the right way without any hand on hand or anything like that. So I think he's doing a lot good. He's good with change. And I think that when he's ready to go back to school, I don't think it would be as hard because he sees his teacher a lot. And his ABA tutor is actually an aide in his classroom. So he sees him every day for ABA. So I think it kind of goes hand on hand.
I think that's so important. Just kind of honoring that. I don't know about you all, but when I grew up, there wasn't all this programmed time. It was, you went to school, you came home, I lived on a farm, I had responsibilities. And it is a little bit simpler, and it does allow us to really work on those skills those are the things you need to get through life. And I think that's really helpful to just kind of reframe. We may not be doing this kind of learning, but we still have an opportunity to do this kind of learning. Exactly. And especially for youngsters that might not smile at the Chromebook. So.
Well, that's our son though. when Dad brought the Chromebook, he knows it's speech time or it's ABA time. So Dad brought in the Chromebook and he thought it was like, all right, time to play. I got a new toy. And then once he saw that we put his speech app on it, he's like, dang, no, thank you. But he knows when it's work time, school time, he knows that the Chromebook is out, and he knows I got to do it. Let's just get it over with. So, and he sits pretty still. I mean, we do Zoom ABA every day for, Tuesday and Thursdays, it's 2 hours. Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, it's 3 hours, and he sits through the whole thing.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You should be giving a webinar on how to do that.
Believe me, we worked on it, but
Yeah, we do have open forum meetings where we just discuss things as parents, what you know, any topic, any subject, you know, so that way we could cover some things that are even fresh on parents' minds on occasion. You know, that's a good thing to cover. Sometimes it also brings out the fact that you know, what do we want to have a discussion on for future meetings, and in this case, future webinars. We actually have had physical meetings before this all hit, and now we're you know, we're doing this webinar style. For some cases, some just straight as a meeting online. So we're trying our best, and we really do appreciate what you were able to help us with today, with all the great information, the great insight. That's
one person's opinion, just one girl's opinion.
Oh, it was great, and it brings a lot of clarity to a lot of our parents. I know we do have a low attendance, but like I said, we've recorded this. We'll put it on our YouTube page and so forth. So we greatly appreciate that you're allowing us to do that. So that way, those that couldn't attend the meeting or didn't attend the meeting for one reason or another, will be able to go back and see it.
My pleasure.
We'll make it available there. I don't know if there's any place where you can provide, if you're interested, providing your email address. If maybe some parents that catch this later can send you an email or advice or anything else as far as the presentation is concerned, you can send that over to me. And if it's in a different format, we can always make it format friendly. Yes, I just tasked Demo with another job. Thank you, Demo. I asked for forgiveness, not permission. But yeah, we'll get that so that way everybody can see it.
You have my email, so if someone says I have a question, just use that email that you have for me. That's fine.
Yeah. What we'll probably do is figure out a way to post it on our Facebook page, either by you know, creating it so that way it's some sort of link that they can get the PowerPoint on, and obviously the video would be on a link, and then with your email if you have any questions or concerns or you know, a little bit more elaboration on some of these things. But other than that, you know, this was a fantastic webinar. And we greatly appreciate it. So.
I wish I had more answers, but it was really nice to be virtual.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean,
it's my special Wednesday item. So.
Yeah. Well,
anyway.
The great thing about this virtual world is we get guest speakers from outside of our area, which typically is more difficult to do. You know, we so it is expanding our minds to be able to get somebody to speak that we wouldn't necessarily have an opportunity to come and visit us and speak with us. So I hope that maybe in the future we can invite you again, and even if it's an actual physical meeting, we probably do and will have the technology so that way you don't have to drive all the way down, especially in the summer heat.
Yeah.
And do a virtual meeting, but a full meeting at the same time for a lot of our members. So.
Well, wonderful. Well, it was my pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate it. Anybody else have any questions?
No, just thank you so much for your time. And I will get your email from James. I don't really use Facebook, but I would love to send you pictures
I would love to see pictures.
Yeah, just because you won't see them posted, but I definitely would love to send them to you. So I'll reach out to James to get your email. Thank you so much. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Nice to see all of you. I'm assuming that you guys probably have a few details about your next meeting to work out. So I will, unless there's other questions, I will absent myself from the meeting room. Again,
No
if anyone has questions, email, and then I will shoot that PowerPoint over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you and see
Take
you.
care.
You too. Okay. So anybody have any other questions? Anything else?
Questions or comments?
Oh, now you want to talk, huh?
Yeah, I didn't need the lady to hear what I had to say, so I don't want to be mean or rude.
Okay.
But she was great, and I really think a lot of people missed out on a lot of good information.
You can stop recording, James.
I think I can. There we go.